Welcome back to the Jaxon Show. I'm your host, Jaxon Solomon, and today I'm going to be reviewing Week 18 of the NFL, specifically two games that caught my eye. We're going to talk about those. We're also going to get into some NBA standings as the NFL season winds down. I don't want to end the show just yet, so we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to bet a little bit of basketball, maybe talk that up a little bit. So without further ado, let's get started. So, Week 18 was final game of the NFL season. I made some predictions about how these games would go. You can check that video out. I made a couple predictions. I think the biggest one that I got wrong was the Bears and the Packers. Another one I got wrong that I'm pretty upset about was the Chiefs Broncos. Okay, I think I pretty much hit the gold on the rest of those. We're going to talk about two games specifically, two games I personally watched. We're going to talk about the Lions taking on the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. There have been over, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 games in the NFL's history. This was the first ever meeting between two teams with 14 or more wins. Between two teams with at least 14 wins. And it was an incredible game. We talk about the suspense, everything leading up to this game. The gameplay itself, I'm going to get into that in just a second, but I really had high expectations for this game. I really anticipated this game to be a little bit a back and forth match. Two teams going toe to toe, right? Lions defense versus the Vikings offense. Vikings defense against the Lions offense, right? Game wasn't that competitive. I will say that. The final score was 31-9. The final score of the game was 31-9. Which means that the Minnesota Vikings only scored one offensive touchdown against the Detroit Lions all year. Crazy to think about. It was the very first drive of these two teams meeting. I think it was in week 4 or 5, if I'm not mistaken, when these first two teams first met. That was the last time Minnesota scored an offensive touchdown against the Lions. Okay? We talk about the gameplay. Biggest thing, takeaway, Jahmyr Gibbs had 4 total touchdowns. He had 3 on the ground, 1 through the air. Will Reichard, I think, was the MVP for the Minnesota Vikings because obviously they didn't score any touchdowns. They kicked only field goals in this game. I think takeaways from this game. Number 1, it shows you what you're really getting into with Sam Darnold. I think that the question with Darnold is, can he win a big game in a big spot, unlike the quarterbacks before him, unlike Case Keenum, unlike the Kirk Cousins, because those two quarterbacks, although, yes, Case Keenum won a playoff game, he didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Kirk Cousins, although he played and won, Kirk Cousins, he was one and done. So what I'm saying is, Minnesota, you have to lock in. Kyle O'Connell, the leash is getting shorter and shorter, I think, every time you make the playoffs and you lose. This was an outstanding season. The only two teams that the Vikings lost to were the Lions twice and the Los Angeles Rams, who conveniently the Vikings had to play in the first round. And if you win, you might have to go back to Detroit. So the playoffs aren't going to be very easy for a team like Minnesota. I do think that if they play a Philadelphia or a Tampa Bay, there is a chance they could win, but let's see what happens in the first round first. On the Lions side of things, I just got 2 takeaways. 1, this defense is outstanding. Although Terrion Arnold, I think, got injured, I think that was the only significant injury for the Lions. Although Terrion Arnold got injured, Aaron Glenn is doing an outstanding job on this defense. Without a doubt, this defense is A-okay. They are just fine. Okay, and the other biggest takeaway I got from the Lions side is that Jahmyr Gibbs is the real deal. He had 4 total touchdowns in this game, 1 through the air, 2 on the ground. I think, and he ended the season with 20 touchdowns, which is the most overall touchdowns in the league. He had 16 total rushing touchdowns, I think 4 total receiving touchdowns, 20 combined, which made him the touchdown leader of the 2024 regular season. But yeah, what else do I gotta say about this game? I will say this. This game wasn't as this game wasn't as good as I expected it. I have a top 10 list of games of this regular season. This game did not crack that top 10. It didn't even make the honorable mentions, and I had to put 2 honorable mentions since there were so many close games this season. All right? So, that was game number 1. Game number 2 was the 44-38 shootout between the Panthers and the Falcons. No, I didn't get a lot of this game. No. But I was peeking my head in, and so I was looking at the Panthers. I primarily watched when the Panthers had the football. This was a tight game. When you look at this, the score summary, you had Bryce Young with a 2-yard touchdown rush. Michael Penix answers with a touchdown rush of his own from 5 yards away. Miles Sanders catches a 33-yard touchdown pass from Bryce Young. Bijan Robinson responds with a 3-yard rushing touchdown. Drake London gets a 20-yard touchdown pass from Michael Penix Jr. with 3 minutes to go in the second half. Tommy Tremble catches a 12-yard pass from Bryce Young. David Moore catches a 9-yard pass from Bryce Young. Drake London catches a 21-yard pass from Michael Penix. Bryce Young runs it in from 10 yards away. Bijan Robinson answers with a run of his own from 4 yards away. And then Miles Sanders ended the game with a 1-yard rush in overtime. What I will say about this game is Panthers have hope. Dave Canales, I think his first season as a head coach, went outstanding because you figured out who the franchise guy was. For the Falcons, you also figured out who the franchise guy was. It would be Michael Penix rather than Kirk Cousins, who I think they're going to cut at the end of this season. So, not great. No. Number 2 on the takeaway. Man, this was a heck of a game. And I watched the beginning of the game. I watched overtime, and the thing I really took away from this is the same stadium Bryce Young balled out. Bryce Young balled out in the 2021 SEC Championship game. So it's no surprise to me that he did the same thing in Week 18 against the Atlanta Falcons because the Falcons play in the state of Georgia. Overall, good game for these two teams. And I think moving forward, when I'm watching these two teams, the future is very bright looking into 2025. All right, so next, the NBA season has already begun. Well, it began all the way back in October, but it's January now. And so when football ends, I don't want to be behind on my basketball. So I figured, hey, let's talk about the NBA a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna go through the standings. We'll talk a little bit about each team, and then we'll wrap up the show. And so let's go through these standings. The Eastern Conference, the teams that would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. The top 6 seeds, starting the Cleveland Cavaliers. If you've known me, you've known I've always been a Donovan Mitchell fan. I think being a fan of an NBA player is more reliable than being a fan of an NBA team. The reason why is because, you're more likely to be hurt by an NBA team than you are an NBA player, unless, the player doesn't play, and it would create a bunch of stuff. But I think it's better to be a fan of an NBA player than it is an NBA team. Now, I would love to be a fan of an NBA team, especially one that's rebuilding now, that has promise. Like how I predicted that the Oklahoma City Thunder would be good. No one believes me. I'll post the episode, fools. Just in case nobody believes me. But, yeah. I'm a fan of Donovan Mitchell. So the fact that the Cavs are at the top of the Eastern Conference kind of makes me happy because, hey, my favorite player plays for that team. So, that's kind of what I was looking at when I saw the Cavs. I'm like, hey, Donovan Mitchell's on that team. He's pretty good, Number 2, the Boston Celtics, 26-10. Overall, second in the Eastern Conference, the defending NBA champion Boston Celtics. This team didn't get Porzingis back. Is Porzingis back? I'm still wondering that. I do know that they lost to Oklahoma City Thunder to OKC a couple of weeks ago. I just can't remember if Porzingis is back or not, so I'll fact check that. But what to say about this team? I mean, shoot, they balling. They're a pretty good basketball team, and Porzingis is back, So when this team is completely healthy, they're very dangerous. I think they're dangerous to the Cavs, dangerous to the Nuggets, stuff like that. So, New York Knicks are third in the Eastern Conference. 3.5 games behind. Yeah. Are they? Hold on, let me see. They're a couple of games behind the Boston Celtics, though. I know that much. The Orlando Magic are a couple of games behind the Knicks, followed by the Bucks, who were pretty rough start to the season. I do remember watching it and kind of seeing the Bucks struggle a little bit at the beginning of the season. Although they did beat the Pistons, unfortunately. So, that's great. I think they beat him once or twice. I'm not sure. Yeah, they beat him twice. This team was a rough start. Now, look at him. Okay, so 6 is the Indiana Pacers, 7, the Detroit Pistons, 8, the Atlanta Hawks, 9, the Miami Heat, and 10, the Chicago Bulls. Now, those are the 7 through the 10 are the play-in teams, in case you're unfamiliar. What I gotta say about the Detroit Pistons is it's been a while since the Pistons have done this. I've predicted the Pistons do this for a couple of seasons, and they just haven't. This is the year they make the play-in. This might be the year they make the playoffs, and we might actually get more than 2 games at the LCA, potentially, built around Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, who I think is out for the year, so that's a huge blow to your team, but I think the coaching definitely stepped up. Players definitely stepped up. Said, we don't want to be the worst team in basketball anymore. Let's leave that to the Brooklyn Nets. Shout out Aiden Rodriguez. But yeah, bottom of the barrel. Philadelphia 76ers, trust the process. Everybody tells me that. Brooklyn Nets, Toronto Raptors, Charlotte Hornets, and the Washington Wizards. Eastern Conference, or excuse me, not the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, has the Oklahoma City Thunder, the second best team in the league, at 30-5. 10-0 in their last 10. They have a 15-game win streak. They just beat the Boston Celtics on Sunday. This team is definitely scary. They play Cleveland tomorrow, and I will say, I'll give you my prediction on that. Let's wait a little bit. Following Oklahoma City is the Houston Rockets. I don't know how or why this team is so good, but following them, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Denver Nuggets, who I have in the NBA Finals. I have Celtics, Nuggets, NBA Finals, because I really feel like the Mavericks didn't belong, and the only reason the Mavericks made it as far as they did is because the T-Wolves beat the Nuggets, and the Timberwolves couldn't beat the Mavericks. I think Denver, you thought Denver at the beginning of the season would be a good team. And I thought that Denver would, how do I say this? I thought Denver would make the finals, but they haven't been great so far this year. The Los Angeles Lakers, who just traded D'Angelo Russell back to Brooklyn, I don't know a lot of Lakers fans out there. Shout out Jordan McKissick. I know he's a LeBron fan. I know he watches the Lakers a lot. So, um, you know, yeah. Next is the Dallas Mavericks. Shout out Riston. I'm giving a lot of shout outs now. I don't know why, but yeah, shout out Riston. And the Dallas, who's a Mavericks fan. I think Luka, who by the way is a baller, really stepped up. Although they lost their last 5 games, 3 out of their last 7 games. In their last 10 games, they've only won 3 of them. So that says a lot about this team. The Clippers, who just got Kawhi back on Saturday, I saw him take his first shot. The Warriors, I feel like I see the Warriors in the media all the time. Because there's either something about the Warriors or there's something about the Lakers all the time. Can't miss it. The Timberwolves are 9th below the Warriors in the play-in. You think this team would be better, but they traded away Karl Anthony Towns at the beginning of the season, and it's affecting this team a lot because, you have 2 bigs as opposed to Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert. It definitely takes a toll on your team. The San Antonio Spurs are 10th in the conference. Definitely a huge turnaround. I think the point guards on the team are pretty good. I was watching the next Spurs game on Christmas, and they talked about how Jeremy Sohan played point guard for a period of time. Now it's all changed with Chris Paul as the starter now, and Stephon Castle balling out. Saw him had a crazy dunk the other day. Kings are 11th. They just fired their head coach, and they've won their last 5 games. I think they fired their head coach like 2 weeks ago, and they won their last 5 games. So they've been going on a streak. The Phoenix Suns are below them at 16 and 18. I can't believe that this team is not very good. I'd at least expect them to be in the play-in. But, there have been a lot of surprises this NBA season. Portland, 12 and 23. Shout out Donovan Klingon. Big dude. 2-time national champion. So, Utah Jazz and the New Orleans Pelicans, and I was watching a video the other day, and it was talking about how the Pelicans have just had so many injuries. Brandon Ingram, Dejounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Zion was injured. I think he just came back the other day, but yeah, man, this Pelicans team has been just so injured. Like, it's been definitely tough to see them play healthy. You know what I mean? So that's definitely something to consider for sure. But that's the NBA. We're going to be diving into that in a couple of months, as well as Major League Baseball, which I will also talk about next month. Some of the biggest free agent moves. In Major League Baseball right now, free agency is about to hit its end in baseball. So, there's a little basketball preview for you if you're not a basketball fan but still tuning in. Coming up next, I got one more thing in the National Football League, and then we'll wrap things up. Coming up next on the Jaxon Show. So, final segment on the show today. I made a list of the top 10 games from the 2024 NFL season, and we're going to go over them right here, right now. So let's start out with some honorable mentions. I only got 2 because I had to try to keep the list short. The Lions take on the 49ers in a Week 17 matchup on Monday Night Football. This was a heck of a game. There were no punts. It was very high scoring, and as an offensive guy that likes to watch 2 offensive teams go toe-to-toe, this was very appealing to me. Just like some of the other games on this list, very high scoring games. And the second honorable mention was the Panthers versus the Falcons Week 18 game. I could put every game on this list, but this was especially good, I think, just because of how high the score was. Game went to overtime. So those are just a couple of the things that, I liked about this particular game. And also the other thing, I want to mention that I had a couple other options. I had the Lions-Rams game from the beginning of this season on, possibly to make this list. I had the Chiefs versus the Ravens game from the beginning of the season to make this list. The Rams versus the 49ers in Week 3, not later on in the season because that second matchup was not very good. I had the Chiefs versus the Chargers versus the Broncos, the Texans versus the Packers. I had the Lions versus the Vikings the first time, not the second time. So I put those games on this list. I put a couple of games on this list. These are the 10 games, and I hope, that if I hope these are good enough for the viewer, for the fan, to listen into. So, number 10 on this list, I got the Bengals versus the Chiefs, week 2 from a season ago. Or from this season. I don't know why I said from a season ago, but this game, what to say? It was a very competitive game going toe-to-toe. It was Burrow versus Mahomes in a classic 4 o'clock window earlier on in the season. Chiefs came off a monster win, and the Bengals came off an embarrassing loss. So this was a kind of a game that I was willing to watch. I was excited to watch this game. I watched it, and that's pass interference. I mean, you could make an argument for it being pass interference that, he went for the ball. Or you could say he didn't go for or you could say that he went for the receiver. I think a lot of people were saying he was going for the ball. My honest opinion, he was going for the ball. But I think the question we need to answer was, did Rashee Rice have a fair chance at making the catch? And if not, why not? If he didn't have a fair chance at making the catch, was it because the ball was too high, or was it because the defensive player didn't allow him the opportunity to make the catch? That's got to be the first question and the biggest question we ask about that PI call. I will say this. Yes, the ball was a little bit high, but I don't think Rashee Rice could have caught that pass. So I would have thrown the flag in that situation. Not trying to help the Chiefs. Number 9 is a game that they lost. The Bills versus the Chiefs game in Week 11. I was on the road for this game, but I did catch the second half. And I will say that this was a very great game to watch. Right? This might have been game of the year up to this point. Allen and Mahomes, another instant classic. And this, if you think about it, this was the only game the Chiefs lost. Or not the only game, but one of the 2 games that the Chiefs lost all year. They should have had more losses, but this was the one that we can say, yeah, Chiefs wouldn't have won this game. Because Josh Allen dominates the Chiefs in the regular season. Next up, we got Lions versus Packers, Week 14. At number 8, I watched the entirety of this game, and I will say this about this Lions versus Packers game. This was a very competitive game, very high-scoring game. Came down to the wire, game-winning field goal. I like this game. It would have been in the top 5, but there are just some more games that are just better than this one that I got right here. Number 7, I got the Eagles versus the Commanders. This was the game Jalen Hurts got the concussion. He came out of the game for Kenny Pickett. Pickett enters the game, and I think that kind of sparks the Commanders' comeback. Jane Daniels finds Jamison Crowder at the back of the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. So, this game was close, for sure. And it was definitely an exciting game. And I always like to pick the high-scoring games because I feel like those are the most interesting when 2 teams are just going back and forth. So number 6 on this list is the Cowboys versus the Commanders in their high-scoring game featuring the Washington Commanders. This game in particular, it didn't go to overtime, but it should have. Jaden Daniels for the it was supposed to be the game-tying touchdown to Terry McLaurin. The kicker misses the extra point. They don't get the onside kick. The Cowboys win it. If there's one game that if you're a Cowboys fan, shout out to Jamin, that if you're a Cowboys fan, you watch and you go, this was the game of the year for us. This was the best game after just having the worst season imaginable. This game would be it because you took a playoff team nonetheless, to a very competitive game where it was going back and forth. It was a very high-scoring game, and there was the opportunity to upset them, which you did. This is a very, very good game to look back on. If I was a Cowboys fan, I'm not, thankfully. But, yeah. That is just the highlight of your season, Cowboys fans, because there's not much else to look at. Ravens versus Bengals in Week 5. This was the game where Lamar Jackson stiff-armed Sam Hubbard, threw the touchdown. Derrick Henry ran it in for the game-winning touchdown as the Bengals missed the kick. This was another very high-scoring game. This game actually went to overtime. 3 through 5 all go to overtime games. Leave a comment on what you think those games will be. Right now, I can see, and hopefully you don't cheat. But Ravens versus Bengals. This game, I will say, this was a very high-scoring game. Defense didn't exist very much, and this is just an instance of Cincinnati. They were in it, and they lose a close game. And if they can win this close game, that would prove that they deserve to be in the playoffs. But they didn't win this close game. This game was lost because of the defense, which was an issue for Cincinnati all year. And now when you look at it, you're out of the playoffs because of your defense and losing these close games. All right. Number 4, Thursday Night Football between the Buccaneers and the Falcons in Week 5. This game was one of the best games, and if I could make it number 1, I would have, but there are just some other games that are just better. This was the peak of Kirk Cousins' season. He had 5 touchdowns and 500 yards in this game. These two teams would face a couple of weeks later. The Buccaneers would lose this game, which means they got swept by the Atlanta Falcons, which I don't think has happened in a long time. This was just an outstanding game to watch. Really fun. And, yeah, if you watch this game, I'm sure you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and that's why it's on this list. Number 3, Bengals, Ravens. This was another game in which, if the Bengals win this is why the Bengals deserve to be in the playoffs. They didn't win it. I think the thing to look at in this game was Joe Burrow balling out, Lamar Jackson answering Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and the Bengals rolling the dice on the goal line to get the 2-point conversion. Yes, I do think that there was multiple penalties. You could have thrown the flag for PI. You could have thrown the flag for face mask. If it was the Chiefs in that situation, coincidentally, it would have come out. The flag would have come out somehow. They would have called an offsides on the Ravens. They would have done this or that or this or that, right? So, you can't have these tit-for-tat calls. This is a very close game. I would have been looking for the flag, and if I was a Bengals fan, I would be very upset as well. Number 2, Bills versus the Lions. This could have been game of the year. This could have been number 1 on the list, but there's just one game that I think was absolutely better. This 90 combined points scored in this game between these two powerhouses. I think Jared Goff had 5 touchdowns, no interceptions after having a 5-interception game earlier in the year. And Josh Allen had, 2 or 3 in this game? I forgot how many he had, but he had a lot of touchdowns. This game was outstanding, fun to watch. I was on the road for this one as well, but I got home just in time to watch the game with a sub. Actually, I had pizza that day. I just got home to watch the game with a box of pizza, and it was delicious. And this game, just added on top of that, it was a very fun game to watch. I love this game. This could have been possibly game of the year, but there's just one game that I would put ahead of this game. It would be the Bills versus the Rams, the Week 14 game. Josh Allen had, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. There was a blocked punt by the Rams. There was, Kyron Williams winning same, right? So this game was an insane game. And this is game of the year, for sure, in my opinion. But you know what? If you disagree, comment down below what you think game of the year will be. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and don't miss the next episode of the Jaxon Show, possibly coming out tomorrow, possibly coming out Thursday. I got 2 more episodes coming out this week, so hopefully I can record those, get those out to the fans. I hope you enjoy it. I always enjoy it. And I'll see you next time on the Jaxon Show. Don't forget to bring a friend.